Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and today I would like to discuss the idea of remaking animated movies. So this mostly comes off of the idea of remaking 3D animated movies, or more CG versus 2D animation, although I would love that as well. But I wanted to start off with the 3D animated stuff because this was something I thought of a long time ago, which of course I do think this idea spawned from video games where it's like, oh, we get remasters and stuff like that. And it was like, you know what would make a buttload of money? If they remastered like old CG movies. Like I would 100%, honestly, I'd probably pay to go see Toy Story in theaters in general because I love Toy Story, but I would definitely pay to see Toy Story 1 remade. Like it's the exact same movie, you just put new framework over it, and then boom, it's just a new coat of paint, and it looks like Toy Story 4, or the upcoming Toy Story 5 even, which is so crazy that might actually look even better than Toy Story 4, which is nuts because Toy Story 4 looks crazy. I thought 3 looked great, and then 4 came out and I was like, this is ridiculous. Like it's crazy how good those movies look. And then of course you go back to Toy Story 1 and it's like, technology. First ever fully CG film, for those of you that didn't know that, Toy Story 1. But I thought about that a long time ago, and I may have mentioned this at some point in this series because I've talked about that online a couple of times. But I thought that was such an interesting idea. Like I would certainly pay, once again, I would pay to see the movie in general because it's a great film, but I'd pay to see the Incredibles remastered to look like the Incredibles too. But don't get me wrong, I love having the old look. I'd love to still have the old versions there. I don't want this to be like a Star Wars thing where it's like, I've never seen the original versions of Star Wars. I have to like go online to get like the old remastered 4K versions. I just haven't done it. I know where to get them. I just haven't done it yet, but you look up Star Wars and it's like, well, here's the special edition. Like George Lucas did not want the originals out there. Like even when they, for a random nerd fact, but for those of you that are unaware, the first Star Wars film was seen as something that was, an advancement in humanity as far as the arts are concerned. Like, and they did a whole bunch of stuff. If you have Disney Plus, please watch the ILM thing. They just did a season 2. It's got like, I think 6 episodes, or no, it's like 3 episodes for the second season. They're like 3-hour-long episodes. But the first season, I think, is like 6 episodes or something, and it's about them doing the original Star Wars films. It is so good, especially if you're nerdy, if you're into like media production and stuff like that. I'm telling you, it is amazing. Like I already knew what ILM did because being a giant nerd, I'm like, I know the company and stuff, but I didn't know all the details. Like I knew like, oh, they made this and this, and there was like 15 other things I didn't realize. Like they were making Star Wars before you could just buy super glue. Like that was an actual story moment in the documentary for the first season where it was like they were trying to figure something out, and one of the guys just happened to have access to like super glue, and he like glues a pencil to the edge of a table or something. They're like, how the F did you do that? It's like, it's super glue. They were making Star Wars before you could buy super glue at the store. That's how old Star Wars is. Just stuff like that is so funny to me. Like, that's crazy. That's so crazy to me. So definitely check that out. I highly recommend it. I think it's called Light and Magic. It's based off of the name, obviously, Industrial Light and Magic. So look at that if you have not seen it, because that's absolutely amazing. But to get back to the topic at hand, the animated movies that we've had, obviously, starting with the CG stuff, I think would be really interesting to see redone. I don't think it'll ever happen. I think it would be worth the money. Personally speaking, I do think it would be worth the money to do it because, like I said, I would love to do it. I mean, heck, like I said, I was a kid when the first Toy Story came out. That might be the only one I didn't actually see in theaters. I think all the other ones I did. That's probably the only one that I never saw in theaters because I was too young at the time. Seen it a billion times. Have the game on Super Nintendo. Love that game, by the way. Amazing music. But I would love to see that redone and looking like, Toy Story 4. Some stuff they might just actually have to redo. I don't know if you could just slap a coat of paint on the old dog. His eyes are a little bit wonky, but like some other stuff, you could just slap a coat of paint on it, I'm sure. I don't know all the details and all that good stuff. And they would also technically have to have all the original work, which I'm sure it's saved somewhere. If you don't know the story of that, also Toy Story 2 actually had that problem where they had an issue where they like lost a lot of the files and someone just still had it, and that was how they kind of saved a big chunk of the film without having to fully remake it. But I would love to see that. I think that would be an amazing idea that, with all the cash grabby things that are done in media these days, and we got live action remakes, it's like just do a straight up animated remake, just redo the animation. Like if you had, this would be insane. Like, and this is why this was more for CG, because it was more in line with video games, and like you slap a new coat of paint on an old rig. That's very different than 2D animation. You just have to redraw it. There is no like, oh, just slap a coat of paint on it. Well, like that coat of paint is literally just remaking an entire film. It's very different. I would love to see that done, which that The CG thing, I already don't think would happen, but it would be way easier than being like, hey, what if we actually just redrew Aladdin? Like, they would never do that. That's never going to happen. I don't think I'd want them to either, because it wouldn't, I mean, obviously, if you did the CG updates, it would be different as well. But it's a vast difference between, I just want to see like a remastered version of an old CG movie versus a fully redrawn film. Like, it just literally would look different. Like, just the way things are drawn. Like, there's so many differences to redoing 2D animation, because you're not redoing it, you're just doing something brand new, versus slapping a coat of paint on something that's already CG. Obviously, it will look totally different. We're talking decades at this point, 30 years even. So of course, it would almost be like a brand new thing because of how far technology has advanced. In fact, I think a really good example of this right now is the new Shrek thing. When Shrek first came out, everybody was like, ugh, it looks weird. Like, Shrek 5 looks funny. Like, why does he have like wrinkles and detail? And it's because technology has advanced so far, and it's been a super long time. When you really think about it, it's been a hot minute since we had Shrek 3, and now, or even Shrek 4. And now Shrek 5 is coming out, and it's like, yeah, he looks weird, because he looks modern. They're using modern, really effing advanced CG technology. And so yeah, they come off looking a little weird because they, all four of those movies, even if the fourth one looks better than the first, which I'd honestly have to go back and look. I felt like even though those movies came out years apart, it's not the same as Toy Story, where it was like Toy Story 1 and 2, very similar. Toy Story 3 came out like almost a decade after the second movie. So that's how we got that vast difference. Same as the Incredibles. It was like 13 years later. So it was a huge difference. The first 4 Shrek movies, 5 if you count the one that was like the special holiday thing that they did, all of those kind of came out in the same era. Even though they were years apart, they were fairly like close together. It would be like a couple years apart, where like maybe 2 or 3 years apiece between each film. And so they came out in the era. Like, that's plain and simple. There was one era, and that's when all the Shrek movies were made. And now we're like a decade past that. The first Puss in Boots movie doesn't even look like the second one. And I was curious if they would go back to the CG animation, which they did. Because the Puss in Boots Last Wish, which looks absolutely amazing, and is an amazing film, go check it out, of course, looks completely different from any of the Shrek films. But it's interesting. Like, that's the difference that we have there. But of course, that's a brand new film with new technology. It's a lot different than slapping a coat of paint on. But I would love it. I always thought that would be a great idea. Like, I would totally pay to see, like, man, it would be too gamey if they called it. They would never call it that. It would never be like Toy Story Remastered. I don't know what they would do if they did that. Like, you'd be hitting that gaming territory. But I would love to see that. I would love to see Toy Story. I mean, honestly, even the third and fourth movie look vastly different because 4 is so insanely advanced. You could remaster all 3 of the first movies, and they would look so amazing. It would be great to see. Obviously, I think the first one is my personal favorite. Extreme bias on that, probably from 100 million hours of having watched it over and over and over again. And of course, playing the Super Nintendo game. But I would love to see that redone. I would love to see the first Incredibles movie. Like, look at the characters in the Incredibles, and it's crazy. Like, I went from the first to the second movie one day, and I never paid much attention to it. But Tony, the girl that Violet likes, or the boy that Violet likes, that dude looks like a 30-something-year-old man in that first movie. It was like they gave him the fountain of youth in that second. Like, oh, that's what a child looks like. But watch that first movie again and look at Tony. I'm like, that is a man. It's like in live action when they have 34-year-old people playing high schoolers. It was like that. I was like, this looks like a grown effing man. Like, how did they not make him look like an actual child? But those are the funny things. It was just the face that they had. Maybe they just had, so much data. That's just how they made him look. And it was like, huh, that is very interesting, because he does not look like a kid at all if you really look at it. But they can remake it and make him look like how he does in the second movie. There might also be some other differences than just slapping a coat of paint on, because the characters do look so vastly different. Maybe that would also make it another issue for the first Toy Story movie, where the characters are so different in detail now that you couldn't slap a coat of paint on it. Obviously, I don't know all the information, but that's why this is just me talking about a cool random idea that I think would be nice. But it would be interesting to see. There's other things in CG. I mean, I'm not being like, hey, we need a reboot of the old series reboot and like modern CG. I don't care about that. However, there's another series made by the same team that would be a God tier series if it was redone in today's technology, and that's Beast Wars Transformers. I would lose my mind if somebody was like, yep, we're taking all of Beast Wars and we're just making modern day CG components. I don't know if anyone has the old files for that show. They might have to they would probably have to literally remake that. I don't know if anybody kept that on file, but I would love it if they use modern day technology. They're like, okay, and they would have to redo some stuff because, like, you know, it was old school tech. Some of the things they did, if they just slap a coat of paint on it, you know, the weird inconsistencies of how they transform would really stick out. But at the same time, I'm already asking for the impossible. I wouldn't give a crap. It would look amazing. You know, put that junk in 4K. Oh, I'd lose my mind. I don't see it happening, once again, for any of these, sadly. But I'm just throwing this out there because I would love to know your thoughts on this, because I'm like, man, they could make money on it. It would be a bit of work. Like I said, you know, it is a little bit more than just slapping a rig on something. I know I don't know all the details, but I know it's easier than fully remaking something. But sometimes things are so old you can't just slap a coat of paint on it. Sometimes you do literally have to remake stuff, and it would be interesting to see. I would love to see it done. Like I said, I don't think it'll ever happen, but it would be cool if it did. It would be very cool if it did. So that was just something I wanted to randomly bring up. There's lots of old, you know, I mean, let's be honest, there's tons of old CG stuff that would look a lot better these days. I mean, like, you can watch old movies. Like, I was watching, I went to see Revenge of the Sith for the 30th anniversary of that, or the 20th anniversary of that. And I definitely noticed a lot more CG than I did when I was, you know, a kid, when I was 12 years old. And I was like, oh, CG faces and stuff like that. It was like, interesting. You notice it way more now. You get it used to newer technology and stuff, and, you know, deep fakes and all that stuff like that. And then you go back to, you know, Revenge of the Sith on the big screen, and it's like, oh, that is not Palpatine's face. That is very CG. But back in the day, it was like, wow, this is cool. Like, you don't even notice that sort of stuff. But you notice it now, especially if you're into that, you know, the background of like how movies and stuff are made. It's a lot more noticeable just because you know the information compared to when I was a kid, of course. So that was something that I thought was interesting. This, I know, is a shorter episode, but it really was just Toy Story, The Incredibles, and Beast Wars. Because like I said, 2D wise, it doesn't really work because you're literally just redoing it. It's not just, you know, slapping a coat of paint. At that point, it would be like AI. If it was like, oh, let's just slap a coat of paint on something that's 2D, that's just straight up AI. Like, that wouldn't really work. But 3D wise, that would be cool. I'm sure there's tons of other shows. I don't know if somebody wants to redo like the really old Johnny Quest intro. I used to love that old intro that they had in like the weird green scan line tunnel thing that they did. That looked good enough. I always remember that when I was a kid. Like, this looks so interesting, and it was like 3D technology, and they would just have like random 2D screens showing bits and pieces from the episode. I thought that was like the craziest thing in the world when I was a kid. And of course, every other random pointless 3D intro that had like nothing to do with the show, it was like, we're making it 3D, and it's like the whole show is in 2D. Like, you guys did not need to do that at all. There's like no reason to put all this 3D stuff in here, and you just did a 2D animated show. But it was the 90s. It was the 90s and early 2000s. They were just like, just throw something CG in there. It looks cool. Like, yeah, that's how we're doing it. You know, so that's just the way it went for a long time. And, you know, I don't think any of those are gonna get remastered. Like, no one's gonna be going back to remaster like old TV show intros that have like 3D, you know, sequences in them or anything like that. Max Steel, crap like that. I would love to see that happen. If you have the power to do that, please do that, because that's ridiculous, and I would gladly watch it and share it. But I don't see that happening, but it's just a nice thought to have. So we'll love to know your thoughts on that. If movies, like old CG movies, were capable of being remastered to look like their more modern counterparts, or if they don't even have a modern counterpart, just look better and look like modern technology, would you guys want to see that? I think the Shrek thing is a great example. Once again, with the way people feel about that, how would they feel if all the older movies looked that way? I think some other films get a bit of a pass. Like I said, the Toy Story movies came out so far apart, especially after the second movie. 3 and 4 specifically look better. Like, they did, each one is like done with enough time passing that they all look different enough from each other that you can clearly see the advancements. And obviously, Incredibles 1 and 2 is over a decade apart just between 2 effing films, which they say they're making a third one. Let's see how that one goes. I hope the story's great, but also visually, who the F knows? Like, we just have to wait and see how crazy that one looks. So there's a lot there. And like I said, there's tons of old CG stuff that could be, you know, redone. I would love to see Beast Wars. It'll never happen. Closest I think I ever came was the Netflix show, which I wish story-wise that was better, but I still enjoyed getting to see the characters come back. But those are my thoughts on that. Just wanted to throw this one out there. This isn't much of an opinion piece, just I'd like to see it. It won't happen. They won't spend the money to do it. But man, it just because of how often we get it in games, I'm like, man, it actually has merit in the film community. Like there's some things where it's like, you could remake this, and not just, obviously there are reboots to things, and like Total Recall is a great example where it'll be like, yeah, it's a reboot, but it's like that is not at all what the old Total Recall movie was. But they just, you get a license and you just do something with it, kind of like Until Dawn, the new movie. There's a brand new movie based on the game, and it's nothing like the game at all. But interesting concept. Sadly, I heard that wasn't too great. We went back a peg on like great video game movies, but we can talk about more bad video game movies another day. For now, we'd love to know your thoughts on potential, well, I can't even say potential, but the hopeful thought of old CG films being remastered or redone to look like, look more modern. I'd love to know your thoughts on that. Would you guys pay to see that? Do you just not need it? I mean, obviously we don't really need it, but I'd love to see it. And I think because of the fact that I love the movies, that's why I'd love to see it. I love Toy Story 1. I love the Incredibles 1. Those are some of my favorite films. It's like, I would love to see those redone. But if not, I still got the old movies. I can still enjoy them for what they are because I just like the stories. It's one of those things like, it's easier to be like, yeah, this is fine because you grow up with it, compared to like if I was watching a bunch of old black and white movies. It just depends on the movie. It would have to be a really good black and white movie. Citizen Kane, I'll watch it. Seven Samurai, yeah, I'll check that out. Like you show me like an old Dracula movie or something, I'll probably give that a shot for sure. But there aren't too many out there for me where I'm like, I need some good CG movies that could be remastered. But if we could get Toy Story and The Incredibles, that's all I need. Just those two movies to just look like their most modern version, I'd be happy. The Shrek thing, I can leave that behind because we got all of those movies at one time. So 5 does look very weird compared to like the slower transition that we've had with, like I said, The Incredibles, obviously it's only 2 films, but Toy Story being the best example of that. It's easier to handle, but I don't know. We'd love to know your thoughts on it. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.